with this issue personally, I think implementation of these policies, quite frankly, have been inhumane and reckless. There are many concerns, but first I'll start with the personal. And my daughter's an IT specialist, probationary employee, who has done, from everybody that I've talked to in the facility, has done amazing work. And she can ascribe to me all kinds of things. She has a higher security clearance than I ever did, even as a JAG. And yet she is fearful of what's about to happen, and to have to go through this when just this past week we buried my 22-year-old son. So in the midst of this, she is having to suffer a possible job loss with her own health issues. And then her dad also, who has been for decades with DOD after being in the Air Force, had to answer a 5-question questionnaire about where he was last week and what he was doing. Putting aside the security issues of having to answer those questions because of the area they are in and what they are doing, is have to answer that is, he's on bereavement leave, it's had to work remotely. And so I just find the dialogue out there about federal workers or any workers. I've had to work remotely for several years because of my son's cancer. And his dad also has had to work a lot remotely when he could. So it's not about, treating federal employees all alike. Yes, there needs to be downsizing. DOD's audits have been terrible. And people who are not performing well should be able to be fired more easily, but it's just been cruel the way this has happened. And they haven't, I feel, in many respects, followed proper RIF procedures in a lot of the things that they have done. There's AI risks that have been raised to me. It's my understanding this is going to be used to determine whether your job is viable or not.
Trish, our heart breaks for you and your family, and I'm sure I'm about the only one incredibly impressed with your strength and your clarity under these circumstances. So thank you for joining and for sharing all that. And so sorry for your family. A heartbreaking series of events. Okay, let's bring Sean in. Sean.
Yeah, I want to express my condolences for what your family's going through.
Thank you.
think it's extremely brave that you're able to address this personal issue during such a time. So thanks for being with us and for what you're going through on several levels, what you're dealing with your son, and then obviously with your family as well. I noted this last week. I think job losses are difficult for anybody, whether it's a private sector job or a personal sector job. And I know that a lot of people go through these issues and feel sorry for them. I don't want anybody to suffer or to have to deal with the challenges that come with making payments, et cetera. And obviously this is a very personal issue for you. I get it for a variety of reasons. Secretary Hegseth made some comments on a video last night that I would call your attention to. I don't know if you've seen the video, but one thing is he made it very clear that this was a civilian issue alone, not on the military side, that all of this was being done with full OPSEC to make sure that it was just, and to answer the questions, I talked to actually some DOD civilians over the weekend and asked them what the status was with the meeting. And it was literally just here's what I did. It's not, there was no need to get into operational security or classification. But if it's, I read and drafted a report on this subject, that doesn't violate anything. But not being able to do at some point, as Elon said the other day, a pulse check, especially in the area of DOD. And I assume based on your service and your family service that you're well aware. I mean, the idea you noted that they can't pass an audit. And the rampant waste and inefficiencies and duplicity in DOD in particular is epic. And I think that we have seen over decades a lot of lip service about addressing it. And so this may not be the way that some people like or want to, but at some point you can't say we need more money, we need more money, we need more weapon systems and do nothing about it. And so this is the first step. And my guess is that it's a first step in getting a handle on how much money is being spent, where is it being spent, and having some level of accountability. And while there may be some pain in that, at the end of the day, our number one focus should be the defense of the nation, not figuring out, and we don't have the money anymore. We face additional challenges with respect to China and other places. And we have our priorities wrong in a lot of circumstances. So I get it. It may not be the prettiest way, but we can't keep going the way the way we have been going. It is unsustainable.
Dan, or I'm sorry, first, do you want to respond to that?
No,
Trish?
I mean, I agree generally with the idea we need to take steps. Um, I just have really deep concerns of the AI influence in the process. When you detach from the human factor, human decision, part of it, and people hopefully will have, in addition to, I mean, I'm not against AI overall, but I think we have to be very cautious and make sure there's a human element, and people in the process, commanders or whatever, professionals. I mean, both my ex-husband and my daughter are civilian employees, but they still play a critical role. But it's hard for an AI to judge that in a snapshot in 1 week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Dan.
mean that's the thing. I mean, one, no private the way that Musk and Doge have treated federal employees is disgraceful. I've said this before. No private company would tolerate a chief executive and his, lieutenants publicly trashing people. They're not all corrupt. They're not all fraudulent. Like, it's good politics to label people that way. And I know most people just look at the bureaucracy as a whipping pole, but it's disgraceful. It needs to be called out and needs to be said over and over again, because Republicans love to talk about the private sector. A CEO would be fired for behaving this way repeatedly. The second thing is, no private company would operate where, like, the CEO of GE would say, give me the 5 things you did this week. He would go to the team leaders and say, you need to talk to your people and find out what the 5 things, that they did. And he or she would say to the team leaders, let's say, I need 5%, either in budget or personnel or both. You know your department's best. You know who's performing and who isn't. And you would go down. So, I mean, the idea that, like, to your point, an algorithm is doing this, you can use an algorithm, but you would layer on your leaders. Otherwise, why do you have leaders? So, I mean, the answer is they don't care what they think. It's an ideological drive to get 5%. And Elon Musk and a bunch of 19-year-old engineers are just spitting it out. Now, to your point, Sean, DOD seems the one place that they did kind of say, you kind of go get us 5%, but there's kind of an outstanding question to what extent they're really going to give them rope. But the way they're going about this, and I know people don't care, no private sector company would ever operate this way.
Well, no private sector company would have ever gotten themselves into this situation. I mean, it's unsustainable. No private company could have gone 8 years without passing an audit. So again, I think private sector, for a variety of reasons, because if you can't afford, I mean, at some point you're going into the red. You start to realize, hey, I've got to make cuts, and you start actually acting. We keep passing the buck year after year after year after year, and in fact do the opposite. We add spending, we add duplicity, we add waste. We literally just added DEI programs and training and contracts to the millions of dollars while we were literally facing additional challenges from abroad.
But your number one asset is your people.
I get it.
I mean, that's the thing. So there's nothing wrong with the cuts. It's just how they're going about this is somewhat idiotic. It just is.
Trish.
Well, but also keep in mind, Dan, that there are certain constraints, meaning part of
unions.
They have to do is that if they go in and target, right, then that opens up a whole nother can of worms. By doing it writ large, because of certain protections that exist in the federal government, they can't look like they're targeting. They've got to actually do things in a non-private sector way because of the actual construct that exists, which makes it more challenging.